Well, hello everybody, and welcome into the show before the show. John Turner, Dan Stickrad here in our Premier Sports Center studios in Shelby Township, Michigan. And, like we did last week, we kind of wanted to hop on here, for a couple of minutes and not a couple minutes, more like a half hour, right? To talk about this upcoming show, talk about this past week, talk about the playoffs. It's more of a casual, I think, kind of conversation where we want to be able to, have a conversation about high school soccer, about the game of soccer here across the state of Michigan. And again, we did this last week, and it was what we thought was very successful. So we said, let's do this again. Let's do this again, Dan. So Dan, welcome back here into our studio. And let's talk here about high school soccer. Something that I think a lot of, when we talk with parents and players and coaches across the state of Michigan about high school soccer and about these rankings, about what, why they happen the way that they do, it doesn't really matter, the reasons. But when we have these conversations, Dan, the interesting thing for us is that a lot of times it comes back to us in a way in which we have some kind of control, over how these rankings come about. And I think it's important for us to continue to talk about that. The rankings are decided by the Michigan High School Soccer Coaches Association. That's who they're decided. That's what's decided by 4 different chairs, talking with coaches all across the state. Do we have an impact on that? I mean, I would like to think on some level, just based on the conversations that we're having with coaches, the conversations that we're having, with the Michigan High School Soccer Coaches Association, that there's probably some impact about what we're doing, and that might make its way into a conversation. But we have zero control over these rankings. So, the rankings that we have here in front of us that we will actually release here, a little bit later here when we actually go into our live show here at 8 p.m. But Dan, we don't have a say in this at all.
No, I've been asked my opinion on teams and players over the years. It happens all the time, but in terms of ranking the top 15, the individual chair in each division, collects the data over the course of the week, looks at the wins, losses, and ties of the top 20 or 30 teams in each division, and tries to come up with a fair ranking order based on what's happened on that week and throughout the season. There's always an honorable mention list as well, which I was going to bring up the fact that a lot of sports have an honorable mention list. Like if you go to the girls' volleyball rankings, there's honorable mention, cross country, honorable mention, Associated Press football, boys and girls basketball, honorable mention. You see volleyball, softball, baseball. The Coach Association Soccer have honorable mention, but I've noticed they have not posted those on their website each week. They did not in the spring, and I don't think they have this fall. So kind of puzzling. When there's a lot of good teams out there in each of the 4 divisions, they should honor those schools as well that are just knocking on the door of the rankings.
Well, it's my understanding too that back in the day, Dan, there were upwards of 20 teams that were announced every week as part of the rankings, and now obviously we're down to 15. And when you think about how many teams are in Division One, we've talked about this. There's over 100+ teams in Division One, over 500+ teams throughout the entire state when it comes to high school soccer. So a lot of teams to choose from, and realistically, you could go from 500 down to 1 and figure out who the top-ranked teams are. It just it doesn't make sense. But with that being said, I think it's really, really important, because we talked about this last week. Sometimes we look at this and go, geez, it's puzzling how a team like Royal Oak, who was ranked for the better part of this entire season, was bounced out last week, and there wasn't really a reason behind that, right? I mean, on paper and result-wise, right? I think the reality for you there at home, the viewer at home, is that there's a lot of soccer going on out throughout the course of the week. If we just look at what happened here this past week alone, Oxford, ranked number 2 in the state, lost to De La Salle, who's in Division 2, unranked. Right, that happened on Monday. On Thursday, we saw Berkeley beat Troy High. We saw Athens beat Clarkston, right? We saw those things happening just in the OAA Red here, this past week. You start talking about what's going on throughout across the state. And as we've talked about this throughout much of this season, and as we did last season too, Dan, is that, just because a team has been having a good year doesn't mean that there's not another team who's having an equally good year. Doesn't maybe deserve to be in that conversation. Right. And again, when I talk with coaches, Romeo head coach, when I talk with Eisenhower, when I talk with all these head coaches, we talk to a lot of them. It seems like now every day I have a more thorough conversation with a high school soccer coach today than I did yesterday. And there are coaches out there who have never submitted any information about their team to Dan, to the High School Coaches Association, and there's good reason for that. It could be because, one, they never got it, the email, hey, I never got the email, or it could be, hey, I just don't want people knowing more about our team. So that's a real thing. But then you look at the strength of a league, right? If we argued what is the toughest league in the state of Michigan, the OAA Red would be right there on the tip of everyone's tongue. If you're a coach across the state, the KLA West would be the other, right? The other, the other one that you say, okay, when you talk about tough leagues from top to bottom, the OAA Red, the KLA West, not saying that the OK wouldn't get one, not saying that you wouldn't maybe see a downriver team or an SCC Red, a couple teams from there. But if you talk about from top to bottom, what is the toughest league in the state? OAA Red. This year, the MAC is down. It's down as far as overall strength. There are some teams in there that are pretty good, but the overall league is down. It's not the same league it was last year. The teams that come out of that and go into districts this year, you're going to see when things come to happen. It's going to be the regional semis and regional finals is where we're really going to figure out how strong the MAC is. Mm-hmm. Because last year we saw Anchor Bay, we saw Fraser in that regional semifinal. Anchor Bay won, and then they fell to Rochester Adams in the state regional finals for that side of the region, and that's where it ended. Now the year before that,
there was even
Grosse
better.
Pointe South was the one that went all the way through, right?
Yeah, Grosse Pointe South got to the semis.
Yeah.
Grosse Pointe North got to the semis in D2, and New Baltimore Anchor Bay was their state runner-up 2 years ago. So you look at the 5 divisions of the MAC, I think the last 2 years it was stronger. Now, don't get me wrong, there's three or four good teams in the red and the white, and then trails out. There's a couple decent teams down in the MAC blue. However, I think overall, because you look how good Anchor Bay was 2 years ago, they were state runner-up in D1.
Yeah.
They have 2 players from that team starting for Western Michigan University right now. Western got to the Sweet 16 last season. So you look at the strength of how good it was 2 years ago, and it was still pretty good this year. It's not bad. I just don't think it's as strong overall, all the divisions combined, than it has been in previous years. But are there teams that could make a run? Anchor Bay is still good. Utica Eisenhower is still good. Chippewa Valley has been pretty competitive this year. Dakota's starting to come around a little bit. They've been kind of somewhat down the last couple of years, and Utica has 17 seniors. Fraser returned 16 players. They won a district last year. They've been ranked. They're having a very good season. Jacob Stone recently broke their school record for career goals, I believe, in early September. They have a lot of quality players, but it goes in cycles. We have 70-plus conferences right now deciding league standings across the state, plus independents. In a year or two from now, another league might just be loaded. And the thing about it is, there are some leagues that it's very good at the top. Say there's 8 or 9 schools in a league, it's very good at the top 3 or 4 are really good, but then it trickles down.
Well, and again, the reason if you're just joining us here, this is like the pre-show before the actual ranking show, and I apologize. I actually had the Division 4 rolling across your screen, so if you're Division 4, you might not want to watch the first part of the show because I just gave you the rankings. But either way, we're doing this because I think it's important, right? We haven't had a lot of other podcast shows here in studio because we've been out in the field covering games for like the better part of the last 9 months.
Yeah, 9 months.
So we haven't had a chance to get out and get back in here on a regular basis and do this. And obviously we're now here in studio right now, and the plan is to get back in here as the high school season kind of winds down, and we'll start running some more shows in here, during the off season. but this past week, we talk about caliber of player, we talk about the level of team, all these things are things we talk about, during the course of a game, a season, a show, be as may. So I think it's important to talk about this. This morning I got an email in regards to a team, and I used the word here during the show last week, and the phrase about the caliber of player, right? I think that the state of Michigan is one of the largest states in the country, right? It's very big. From here to the UP, it could be upwards of 9 to 10 hour drive.
I mean, you go to the west side of the UP, you're looking at 12, 14. I mean,
so it's a very large state. There's not a lot of states that are in this country that are like that. We're lucky to be in a very big state. There are levels of talent and talent pools all across this state, whether that be here in Metro Detroit, which probably has the largest talent pool in this area, right? The west side of the state, there's a hub in the middle part near Lansing. There's a hub up near, like Genesee County. There's talent pools, right? And then there's players that that might be off in the sticks someplace that have access to good training and are able to kind of rise to the top. There are players that kind of come in from out of state to play club soccer here in Michigan because of where they're located, right? Just based on where they're located in Ohio or other parts of the country. So the reason why I bring this up is that to be successful at the high school game, there's a lot of things that have to happen. Right, a lot of things have to happen right. One is you have to have a team that you're not going to get it done with a young team. You're not going to get it done with a bunch of freshmen. You're not going to have a state championship team with 20 freshmen, right? If you look at the teams that have won state championships, they have won it with 16 seniors. They've won it with 18 seniors. They've won it with 15 seniors and a couple underclassmen who are really strong, right? You look at the NFL, right? You're not going to win it with a bunch of rookies, right? You're going to win it with a bunch of players who are experienced, who have the ability, the fundamentals, right? They have all those things, and they have all come together at the same exact moment and are all on the same page, right? And that's how teams win. Right, you look at, Tom Brady, right? Peyton Manning, Eli Manning, these superior and superb quarterbacks. The Patrick Mahomes of the world who are winning, going to the Super Bowl their rookie year. That's not a normal thing, right? It's not a normal. It's more of an abnormal. It's not necessarily the standard, the gold standard. And the reason why I bring this up is because there are certain teams in this state that have a lot of success, but they don't have the same talent pool. Maybe as a Metro Detroit team, maybe as a Novi or a KLA West Side team, LOA Red. There are teams, there are players that come from smaller communities, and they have found a way to be successful. And how they've been able to accomplish that is through a very, very, very good system of play. And we talked about that last week in regards to Berkeley, because Berkeley is one of those teams that when you look at their roster, they have really good players. They have really good players. And we look at last year, all-state second team, Owen Stone, right? So I think it was second team last year, right? At the goalkeeping is Seth Davidson, a fantastic goalkeeper, right? And you compare that to other players in the region, and they're comparable players to one another. But the reality is that Berkeley is a smaller community. They don't have the same enrollment as maybe as an Athens or a Troy High. I think Troy High has close to 3,000 students. They have close to 1,200, right? So looking at that from a number standpoint, Berkeley is going to have less of an advantage than Troy High would be, just because of the fact that there are just more numbers at Troy High. A disadvantage. When you have players coming to try out, and there's 110 kids coming to tryouts, and you have 60 showing up at one school, that's a disadvantage. You know what I mean? We talk about that because does that mean that a Berkeley can't be competitive? No, of course not, because look at them. They've been competitive for almost 14 years now. But the recipe for success at this level comes from, it's a mixing pot, right? It's not just talent alone, because I've been a part of talented teams and we didn't win anything. And I've been a part of teams that are less talented with, didn't expect it, and you go all your way to win it. We look at Rochester Adams last year, Dan, we talked about this. Rochester Adams was not a team, we thought they were good, but we didn't think they were state championship good. If you look at them from where we were looking at last year, they were not the quality of team that we expected to go all the way for a deep playoff run. and make it to a state championship. We thought about that when it came to Troy High. Why? Because Troy High had 16 returning seniors. Right? Because they had just come off of a great season the year before that, where they fell in a regional final to who? Anchor Bay, right? Oh, it's Grosse Pointe. Was it Grosse Pointe they lost to in 2020 or 2021?
Well, Anchor
No,
Bay.
Troy. Troy lost to Northville. Was it Northville?
No, Northville beat Clarkson in the regional final.
So then it was. I think they lost to Anchor Bay or Grosse Pointe South. They lost to one of those teams, but again, that's a team that had gone undefeated the entire. The only loss they had was that loss, right? So we talk about this for the reason that there are inequities in regards to certain schools in this area that have access to talent, but it's the coaches like Steve Filosic at Berkeley who have found a way with the numbers that they have to build a foundation that is rock solid. And hey, does that mean that they're going to make super, super long playoff runs every year and go win a state championship? No, because not every team can do that. I mean, Athens might have a strong foundation, Troy High might have a strong foundation, but that doesn't mean they're going to make long playoff runs because they go through this ebb and flow of talent every year. Troy Athens has not had an all-state player. Now, this will probably be their third consecutive year where they will not have an all-state player.
They didn't have a returning all-state player is what you mean.
Yeah, because they have not had one now. This is the second year in a row they have not had a returning all-state player. And it'll probably be a third year in a row because I don't know if there's any players specifically in Athens that might meet that. And that's, and obviously there's still, the playoffs that could happen. That could be the third year in a row, and that's uncommon for Athens. So I think that's important to talk about because there are teams. Well, I'll give you a perfect example. Last year, Goodrich. Goodrich is a team that won a ton of games last year. They had a player, Caden Russell, who, scored a ton of goals, over 100 goals in his career, the school record, right? The league they play in, which is that was in Saginaw Valley, Flint Metro,
Flint
right?
Metro League.
Yeah, so that Flint Metro. Unfortunately, they're playing. Most league nights they're playing, they're beating teams 13-0. And when you do that, you're going to get a lot of wins, you're going to score a lot of goals. But when you go into the playoffs, I think they ended up losing last year in the district finals.
Well, no, they lost in the regional semis. They got upset by Hamtramck.
Yeah.
No one knew what Hamtramck did because Hamtramck has been independent in soccer, and they don't really report their scores. They lost in the regional finals of Bloomfield Hills Cranbrook last year, Hamtramck, and that was only their 14th game. They finished 8-6-0.
Yeah. So
Hamtramck was kind of the surprise team last year, but you look at enrollment, and I'll give a couple examples. I remember, I think it was back in 2004 in Division IV, you had Burt Lake, Northern Michigan Christian, because there's two Northern Michigan Christians, one in McMain, one in Burt Lake. The Burt Lake version got to the state finals in Division IV. They lost, but they had a couple Division I players. The thing about Burt Lake, Northern Michigan Christian that year is they only had 30 kids in their high school. They had pretty much every available male on that soccer team. Under the national sub-50 student rule, they had 7th and 8th graders allowed to play in varsity because their school is so small. But they had a great team for a couple of years there. Then those kids all graduated and they kind of faded away. But it's hard when you're that small, continue it.
Yeah.
And especially Division IV. In the upper divisions, D2 and D1, you can have a small enrollment than your counterparts at the top of the tier in terms of enrollment. You have a better chance of sustaining it, but it's more difficult because, again, you have Berkeley has 1,200-1,300 students. You look at Rockford has, 2,500? Troy's at 23. I mean, some of these schools are big. Salem, Canton, Plymouth, these schools are all large. Macomb, Dakota's pushing 3,000. I mean, that's been the biggest school in the state the last couple of years. East Kent one's up there as well.
I just think the bottom line is that there's no magic ball or crystal ball that determines who wins. I think that there's just the right coach can mean a lot, right? And players that buy in, right? Who understand the system, who are going to put everything they have into it. Good leadership at your captain level, right? Those are all things that really make a difference. The continuity, playing together since you're young. All those things are recipes for success at the high school level. Talent alone will not get you there. There are a lot of talented teams that should have gone all the way and won multiple state championships over the years, but they didn't have it, right? and then it had that it factor. And I think that that's an important factor to talk about. But hey, we're we are. We're here tonight. We're doing this for the second consecutive week. It's 7:43. Hey, in the comments, ask us questions. What do you want to know more about? What would you like to see more of here on MSN? This is a cool opportunity for you to engage with us, ask us questions. I know that from week to week to week, there are a lot of changes that take place here in the rankings, and I'm sure you have questions. And we'll do everything we can to facilitate that process and talk to you about how to get ranked, and to go through the nuances of these rankings. We have about 15 minutes before we go live. Well, we're already live. We'll stay live, but before we get into the actual high school ranking show with all the changes and all the updates for this week 7. But if you're tuning in, hey, where you're watching from, I got an email this week from Harbor Springs. They actually asked us to join them for their team dinner. We would have done that, but if it weren't for the 5-hour drive, get your questions and ask us a question. I've got access to that right now here through YouTube. Ask your questions now, and we're here to answer them in any way that we can. Dan, when we talk about rankings, what we're doing here tonight and what we've been doing here for the last 2 years is the first of its kind in the state of Michigan for soccer. There was never a platform outside of just releasing them on the Michigan High School Soccer Coaches Association website. There was nothing that was being done to promote this game in the manner in which MSN is doing it. There are a lot of sites out there that dedicate some time to soccer or high school soccer, but there are not a lot of platforms that dedicate their entire time to it. And we don't dedicate our entire network to high school soccer, but we dedicate our entire network to soccer. And as part of that, high school is just one piece or one component of that. But you've been doing this for a long time, Dan. I do want you to talk about that for a second. Talk about the importance of what we're doing here because of where this all started here many years ago.
Yeah, when I got my start as a journalist, it was 1993. I was in college working for a little weekly newspaper, as a lot of people get their start in. But there was never much of a platform for soccer, even in the statewide media. A high school soccer preview, like for example in the Free Press or News, it's 1995. Here's 3 teams to watch out of 500, and that's supposed to be a statewide preview. Things have changed. It's gotten better. There's more and more clubs, more and more schools adding soccer. We've had the rise of the developmental academies / MLS Next now and the girls' academy. So the landscape has changed. There's more and more kids are playing soccer. More and more kids are playing at a higher level. But so the goal at MSN, Jonathan and I sat down July of last year over a pizza, and we talked about, what do you want things to look like in a year or 5? And
Dan's got to turn his phone off.
Yeah,
it's okay.
I forgot.
No big deal.
Yep. It's my bad. So there's a lot of things that we'd like to be able to do, and as we continue to grow, we'll share more ideas and do different things and try to get more areas of the state involved as we move forward.
And I think it's important. There are other organizations that have been around. I remember when I was coaching at Groves, Oakland Press, MI Prep Zone would come out, right? You'd see a Michael Walwork, you'd see a Michael Mowry, right? You'd see these different reporters coming out, and it meant that your team was going to be covered, an opportunity to showcase your program. It was really exciting. And I remember my players, members of coach, that was exciting for our program to have that. And then also there was Michigan Soccer Central, and Michigan Soccer Central has been around now maybe the better part of a decade. I don't know sure the exact time that they got started, but sometimes we're actually confused when we go out to locations because our names are obviously very similar. But But there are significant differences between us and Michigan Soccer Central. You know, and not that that's a good thing or a bad thing. There are just significant differences. Michigan Soccer Central does a great job of, and they have done that since day one, of promoting the high school and the youth game here in the state of Michigan. But you know, but from the standpoint of what we're doing, like with this show, for example, with the shows that we've done here over the past couple of years, along with our live matches, you know, there's not a lot of organizations out there that are dedicated to soccer in the manner in which we are, and doing the things to the level in which we're doing them. And I think that that's why when we start talking about just the magnitude of MSN right now here in the state of Michigan, you know, it's really cool because we go places, Dan, and we're being recognized basically everywhere that we go from our high school games. It's been really fun and exciting, you know, as we have a chance to go out and see players and meet parents, get the emails that we get on a regular basis, the text messages, the feedback from parents. It's been really fun and really cool. So we're super excited about our direction, and there's a lot of really cool things that we have in the works that we'll continue to talk about. One of those things, which we will talk about here tonight a little bit, is our 2023 MSN top 50 high school players. That will actually be released here on Tuesday. We are excited about bringing that to you. That will be the top 50 players, 45 field players, and 5 goalkeepers from across the state of Michigan. Dan has spent a lot of time and energy and effort in talking with coaches and just different pieces of the pie here in the state of Michigan to put together this top 50 list. And there's no like 50 through 1. It's not like the high school teams that we did. It's just here are the 50 best players in the state of Michigan based off of everything that we know and the data that we've been provided about these players. And Dan, I want you to talk about that for a second here. We're getting closer to wrapping this part of this pregame show up here, but just, why don't you tell people kind of like the effort and the time and energy that you've put into this top 50 for players?
Yeah, well, let's start like even last spring with the girls. Several months before the season, I started combing through websites. I mean, conference websites, newspapers, the coach association websites, recruiting websites, club websites. I mean, literally thousands of websites. You start talking to high school coaches on the phone, email, text message, and a lot of coaches are very open about, hey, I'm in this conference. These are the best players in my conference. These are the kids that are getting recruited. These are the kids that came over from MLS Next that didn't play high school last year. And this is our region. There's a couple other kids in another district down the road that one of those two teams are going to get the regional. They both got 3 or 4 really good players that play in a good club. Watch out for those kids as well. And sometimes coaches will tell you, hey, there's this one kid that goes to, School X. They're not very good, but this kid's very special. There might be a Division I, Division II recruit, so you need to accommodate. So, yeah, it's a challenge. It's a lot of work involved. I sent out 3 rounds of emails back in August, the first week of the season through Labor Day, to all the athletic directors and athletic secretaries around the state which have a soccer team. And then we probably have emails about half of the actual coaches around the state. There are a lot of new coaches and some come and go. But some schools forward those emails to the coaches, some you don't know. There are some coaches at various schools, and unfortunately you know who you are. You're never gonna return a survey, you're never gonna return a phone call or text to me or probably anyone else in the media. It's just the way it is. If that's your priority, fine, but we press on, we keep compiling data, information. I think between phone conversations, email, and text message, I was in contact with about 350 coaches here since the beginning of August. So a lot of these are players. So we did 45 field players, 5 goalies with little capsules about each player. The next 150 field players, 20 more goalkeepers to watch, and then players to watch by positions, forwards, midfielders, defensemen, goalkeepers. Then we listed impact transfers, impact freshmen, and so on down the list. And these are all stuff that's coming from all corners of the state. And there are some coaches that take a lot of time to put together, their thoughts about players in their league, again, in their district or region or county or just area of the state. I had a few coaches out in the west side in Grand Rapids and Kalamazoo. I've had a couple in northern Michigan. They sent me a complete list, detailed list about all quality players in their area of the state. And we try to come up with a quality list to kind of showcase these rankings. At the end of the day, do they mean much? No, because most of these kids on this list are going to get all state, all region, all district. They're going to be all conference, all area, all county, wherever they're at. They're going to be reaping the various types of postseason accolades. So this is a very detailed list. A lot of effort was put into it. But like any list, I'm sure we'll get the one email or phone call or two from some parent or some kid who thinks they got snubbed a little bit. And unfortunately, there are certain conferences that had great participation every year. I used to do this for another network for a good decade over at State Champs. I contributed soccer and other sports to them for a while. But there are certain conferences in the state where the participation rate annually, it's low. And I guess that kind of sends a message where if you have 30 schools in your conference and only eight coaches can actually call you back or send you a survey, well, so if there's any decent players, maybe not like first or second team All-Stater, but a decent player might be getting a postseason honors, and that many coaches don't reply, a few kids might get left off the list.
Here's my message right now, because we're talking about like player participation and all of it, right? There are over 500 schools in Michigan. Right?
Yeah, because you throw in the non-MHSSCA members, some of these Christian schools and some of these homeschool teams. It's right around just over 500 teams. I believe.
David Kane just chimed in here, and he wanted to say, hey, thank you guys very much for what you're doing. Hopefully, more people can show support. This is the message, right? Right now, we're doing this Best Fans here. We started it last week. We're going to announce the winner of the OAA here during the high school show here, right before we do our Division I rankings tonight. So tune in for that for sure. But there are 500 schools. If 10 players or 10 people from each school just hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel, we would go from the 3,974 subscribers that we currently have to 8,974 subscribers, right? The more eyeballs that can see what we're doing, the stronger that this network can continue to grow. By adding more operators, more cameras, more content, right? The more content that we could provide here to the great state of Michigan, the better it is for everybody involved. There are over 90,000 families that participate in soccer in this state, give or take 1,000 or two, right? And
it's a lot.
We are the only dedicated soccer network that exists here in the state to the caliber and the quality to what we're doing. So I encourage you, I don't care where you're watching from. It does not matter to me where you're watching. It doesn't matter. If you want us to come cover a game up in the Thumb, we will happily come and cover a game in the Thumb. If you want us to come cover a game up in Harbor Springs, we'll make a weekend of it. Make sure it's a Friday night game, and we'll stay for the weekend. We'll make that drive. I've been to Mackinac Island. I've been to Grand Rapids. I've been to Leesburg, Virginia. We've been to Ohio and Chicago, and we've been everywhere, Grosse Pointe North and Grosse Pointe South, Anchor Bay, all the way down river, Gabriel Richard. We'll make our way out to wherever it makes sense for us to be able to provide this coverage. All we ask is that you share this message, that subscribe to our network. The more subscribers we have, the more impact that we can have across the state and continue to provide the quality content that we're trying to provide to each and every soccer family in this state. So hit that subscribe button, like us, share this with your friends and family, and help us continue to bring this great sport to more families and more soccer players across this state. It is 7:57, and we are about to hop into our live show here in just a moment. If you have any questions, this is the chance. Last week, we even went a little longer last week, because of some of the controversy with some of those changes in the rankings. And I don't know if there's any controversy this week, but the night is still young, Dan. So
there's going to be at least one school in each division that's kind of puzzled by where they're at on the list or not being on the list at all. But
that's right.
I guess that shows you that people are following our network and following the rankings in their sport, and just following the sport in general.
And hey, we're only 23 subscribers away from 4,000. So tonight's tonight. Let's see if we can find 23 subscribers here tonight to get over the top to 4,000. But I think without further ado, let's get ready here for our ranking show. We will, after we intro the show, we'll be back here to cover this ranking show. Week number 7 here starts right now.
Back to Beatrial. He'll take a shot and he'll bear it! And then he'll fire it from Billows and it'll go in! Now Worrell has a good cutback from him. He'll fire one, and that's gonna go in! Oh, and both goals so far. He'll fire one, and that's a wonderful save, 280. That's missed. Oh, it's Stone! In the... He'll fire one now from distance, and that is in! What a strike by Ben Maher!
Well, hello everybody, and welcome into week number 7 of the high school ranking shows presented by the Michigan High School Soccer Coaches Association. My name's John Turner, this is Dan Stickrat, and we are live right now in our Premier Sports Center studios. We're live on YouTube. If it's your first time stopping by, hit the subscribe button. It's not that hard. You can either tap it with your finger on your phone or on a mouse on your computer. It doesn't matter how you go about doing that, but that is how we grow. We are 23 subscribers away, Dan, from 4,000. Let's get it done here tonight. So that's all I'm going to say about that. A lot to cover here tonight on the show. We had the top 15 teams from each division all across the state of Michigan. That's 60 teams. There were 43 total changes here this week. We'll get to those here in a moment. This past week, we had our best fans voting contest, starting with the OAA. Those votes are finalized. Over 1,200 votes happened here this past week. And we want to say thank you to all the participants. There is one winner and one winner only. And the winner has received a free broadcast from the Michigan Soccer Network for any sport. So our PMG Sports Network will cover any sport at your school for your participation in voting and helping your school win. And we will announce who that winner is here later in this show. If it's your first time and you haven't done this before, we expect participation. We will call your name, just like in school. I have no way of doing that, but in the comments section, let us know your thoughts. Ask us a question, and I would say let us know where you're watching and who you're rooting for. As the district pairings were announced here earlier today on the Michigan High School Athletic Association website, and we'll talk about that a little bit here throughout the show. We'll release that, and as always, all the rankings, Dan, will be released here at 9 p.m. Eastern on our website, themichigansoccernetwork.com. And it will be released on all social media platforms at the exact time. So you'll have access to all of that and more. MSN merch. That's right, MSN merch. We are finally, I mentioned this last week, we'll continue to mention it. MSN merch is a thing. It is time for you to purchase that merch and receive 20% off. We currently have a top 50 high school team exclusive shirt only available for a short time. That's any team that was in the top 50 is on the back of that shirt, and you can purchase that right now through the MichiganSoccerNetwork.com. We'll have a top 50 players shirt as well. They'll have all the names of all the players of the top 50 players from across the state. Let's take a look here. Here is that graphic coming here Tuesday, October the 3rd, as 2023 MSN top 50 high school soccer players can be released here on Tuesday. So a lot to get through. Jeff Corstange, thanks for all you guys do, all the time you guys invest into high school soccer. Well, Jeff, we appreciate you. Thank you very much. I mean, honestly, I haven't felt like I've worked a day in 2 years. I mean, I work a lot of hours, but I haven't felt like I actually worked, Dan, in some time.
Well, if it's what you love to do, then you shouldn't have to count hours, right?
That's right. I don't count hours. I think my wife does, but I don't count hours. But hey, there are 43 changes, and what do you say we hop in here and talk about those changes here right now? We're going to start with, like we always do, we'll start with Division 4 first, as always. That will pop up here on your screen, and we will start with those right now. You get them on the screen here first, Dan. I got to push the button. And there they are. They are at the bottom of your screen. They will cycle through here throughout the rest of this segment. But Division 4, week number 7. Coming in at number 15, previously unranked, Rochester Hills Lutheran Northwest. They're 9-4-1. Manchester, 14-1-1, up one spot from 15 last week to number 14. Plymouth Christian, 5-2-4, down one from 12 to number 13. Leland, 11-4-1, up 2 from 14 to number 12. Harbor Springs, all the way up there in the state of Michigan, holds at number 11. Byron Center Zion Christian, 12-3-1, is down from 3 to number 10. Kalamazoo Christian, 13-5-0, up 1 from number 9 to number 8. Granville Calvin Christian, 7-4-3, up 1 from 8 to number 7. Madison Heights Bishop Foley, 11-1-1. They are up 1 from 7 to 6. Now, Bishop Foley will be taking on Division 4, Grosse Pointe Woods University Liggett, into the Cardinal Championship of the CHSL here on Wednesday night at 5 p.m. Guess who's bringing that to you? We are. So we're excited to bring that to you here on Wednesday evening. But here are the top 5 for Division 4. Kalamazoo Hackett, 11-1-1, up 1 from 6 to number 5. Bloomfield Hills Roper, 12-1-1, up from 5 to number 4. Grand Rapids North Point Christian is 10-2-3. They're up 1 from 4 to number 3. And for I think this is the 5th consecutive week, Western Michigan Christian, 13-2-3, and Grosse Pointe Woods University Liggett are in that 1 and 2 spot, respectively. And there are your top 15. We'll talk honorable mentions here in just a moment. But Dan, those are the top 15.
And we'll do an update. I believe tomorrow, number 13 Plymouth Christian plays at top-ranked Grosse Pointe Woods University Liggett. So if you remember, they were in the same conference for years, the Michigan Independent Athletic Conference. Liggett switched over to the Catholic League about a decade ago. But that's two top 15 teams going to go at it tomorrow in a non-conference matchup. And Plymouth Christian, I believe, was in the state semifinals last year, but along with Rochester Hills Lutheran Northwest and Bloomfield Hills Roper, they all three come from that blue division of the MIHSSCA, so that's a very strong conference. Bishop Foley and Liggett on collision course to meet in the Catholic League Cardinal Division Championship this week on Wednesday. Foley, 9 returning starters this year. They have kind of lived up to their billing as being one of the top teams in D4. And the Ventures have not won a state championship, I believe, since 1997. So definitely a team to watch as that state tournament begins here in just a few weeks. Harbor Springs, thanks for the invite. A little bit far away for us to go on a road trip, but their coach sent me an email earlier this season, so they talked about they had a lot of players back, but a very good freshman class. which will kind of keep their pipeline going the next few years. You know, up in northern Michigan, Leland, I don't know how many times Leland has got to the regional semis, regional finals, Final Four. I know they won a state championship, I would think, in 2018, but the last decade, Leland's been a very good side. Kalamazoo Hackett, you know, remember just less than a decade ago, I think they lost to the finals once or twice. They got to the semis another year. Well, they brought back a ton of players this season, and the Fire Irish out of that Valley division of the Southwestern Athletic Conference, they're playing some very good soccer right now. So top to bottom, not a ton of changes. I mean, schools stayed roughly where they were at last week, but there's a lot of teams here I can see winning at least district championships, and a lot of the conference championships will be decided this week or the following week. And we'll see who emerges there as a conference champion out of this list, and we'll make a run in the MSSCA tournament just a couple weeks away.
No question about that. As we talk now, Rochester, who's Lutheran Northwest, is the team that popped in here this week, and popping out was Bangor, 8-1-3 last week. They moved out. Honorable mention: Hillsdale Academy, Saginaw Valley Lutheran, Marcellus Howardsville Christian. Again, 12 changes here in week number 7 for Division 4. I want to remind everyone again that coming up this Wednesday night, we will be out at the CHSL Catholic League Finals from Gabriel Richard High School as they take for both the Bishop and Cardinal Championship. Cardinal taking place at 5 p.m., Bishop taking at 7. That matchup, again, Grosse Pointe Woods University Liggett versus Bishop Foley in the 5 p.m. game. And that Cardinal Championship, the Bishop Championship between St. Mary, Orchard Lake St. Mary's, their first time ever making it to a Catholic League Final, against newcomer St. John's Jesuit. That game kicking off at 7 p.m. Eastern, right here on the Michigan Soccer Network.
St. John's is from Toledo.
That's right.
We talked about in that Central Division of the Catholic, 3 Toledo-based schools moved into that conference. So they've, in their first year, an Ohio-based school is going to play for the Catholic Championship.
That's right. We come back from break. Division 3, the top 15 teams from Division 3, 9 changes this week. We'll talk about whether or not anything happened in the top 5, and get ready because we'll come back here with those top 15 after this. You're watching the Michigan High School Soccer Coaches Association High School Ranking Show live right now on the Michigan Soccer Network. Right back.
There's good. Then there's sticky, sweet, spicy, double your napkins, don't even share with your own best friend. General So Good. Introducing General Soul Sauce for a limited time at Buffalo Wild Wings.
What rhymes with great?
Participate.
Where does greatness start? Here, in the classroom. On the diamond.
In the pool. On the field. Where will your greatness take you?
To better grades.
To more friends.
Yeah!
Be great.
Participate!
Thank you for stopping by the Michigan Soccer Network. To not miss out on any of the action, all you have to do is simply hit the subscribe button, and that way you're notified every time we bring new content or go live. Thanks for stopping by. Welcome back here into our Premier Sports Center studios. It is Sunday, October 1st. It is the first Sunday of October. September is gone. Fall is not, or is still, I don't know what this is right now. It's 83 degrees outside, 84 tomorrow. I mean, I don't know about you, but I like it when it's colder when it's supposed to be cold, Dan. I would prefer it to be cold when it's supposed to be cold. I prefer it to be, warm when it's supposed to be warm. Any thoughts on that?
I don't like winter. Let's just put it that way.
Oh.
It can stay warm out through Thanksgiving. That'd make me happy.
No, I do not agree with. All I'm saying is that when it's supposed to be cold, let it be cold. When it's supposed to be warm, let it be warm. That's all I'm going to say about that. But welcome back here to the High School Ranking Show. John Turner, Dan Stickrat. We're excited here. This is week number 7 of the high school rankings. It is the first Sunday in October. There's not many more of these left here this season. I only anticipate there being maybe 2 more of these at the most, as we are only 10 days from the first district matchup taking place, which will start here on the 11th of October. So yeah, Dan. So I'm excited. I know you're excited, but it's Division 3 time. That's what we're going to talk about here right now. Division 4 is still on your screen, but we're going to move that off and start with Division 3 here in just a moment. Reminder, please hit that subscribe button. I've said it probably 6 times already tonight. I'll continue to say it because we are just 23 shy. The last time I looked of hitting our goal of 4,000 subscribers. So let's do that. But without further ado, let's get into the top 15 for Division 3, and we will put those on your screen right now. And there they are. And let's go ahead here, and we'll start with number 15, newcomer, unranked Imlay City, making their way in at 10-4-1. Wyoming Godwin Heights making their way back into the rankings. They were previously unranked here last week. They're 8-0-1. Williamston 9-5-1, up 1 from 14 to number 13 this week. Gladwin, who was a newcomer last week, 14-1-0, up 3 to number 12. Elmont up 2, 11-1-2 to number 11. Milan holds at 10 at 10-3-1. Elk Rapids holds at 9 at 15-2-2. And Alma 13-4-0, holding at number 8. Grand Rapids South Christian, previously in the top 5, 10-4-2, now at that number 7 spot, down 4 spots. Now your top 5 for Division 3. Notre Dame Prep up 1 from 6, making the way back into the top 5 at 11-4-1. Flint Powers holding at 4, they're 10-4-3. Hartford up 2 from 5 to number 3, and they're 17-0-1. And Hudsonville Unity Christian 14-1-0, and Detroit Country Day 11-2-2 continue to hold at that 1-2. And those are your top 15 for Division 3 here, week 7. Total changes 9 this week. Last week we only saw 2, so some slight changes here in Division 3, Dan.
Yeah, and one of the 2 teams that fell out, we had Fenville and Wyoming Lee. Fenville actually, I believe, captured a conference championship, clinched first place in the, I believe, the Lakeshore Division at Southwestern Athletic Conference. And they fell out of the rankings, so I'm not really sure. They must have had maybe a non-conference loss. Somewhere in there. Imlay City, regional finalists last year, graduated like 12 players. I think they lost 7 starters. Kind of rebuild a little bit this year, but they're starting to play a lot better as some of those new starters have gotten experience. They're in the same conference with Almont, number 11. Almont and Imlay City tied right after Labor Day, I believe, 1-1 draw in the Blue Water Area Conference. And Imlay City has won 7 straight conference championships, so that league will be decided here in the next week. See if Imlay City or see if the Spartans can, grab at least a share of that conference as well for the 8th straight year. Or will Almont take the prize in solo style? We'll see what happens there. Gladwin's scoring a lot of goals. They broke into the rankings last year out of that Northern Michigan Soccer League. And the Flying G's, love that nickname, the Flying G's, playing some great soccer. Be interested to see if they can also capture a district championship to their resume. Milan and Grosse Seal out of that Huron League. Milan, the last 2 years, Milan's been consistently a ranked team after not having very many ranked teams in the previous decades. So Milan's an up-and-coming program. You look up at that list, Williamston, they have always seemed to be there. Flint Powers, Pontiac Notre Dame Prep, Hudsonville Unity Christian, Detroit Country Day, a lot of these, it just doesn't matter what year it is. Some of these programs, they always seem to be in the top 15 or just outside the top 15. And then Alma, remember I mentioned that earlier in the season, Alma started, I think, 9-0-0 last year, and they got to the regional finals. They brought back a ton of talent. So they played some D1 and D2 schools early in the season back in August, have those 4 losses. But in that 2 divisions of the Tri-Valley Conference, Alma's been on fire. They have a lot of good teams, and that's a sleeper pick. When you get to the regional finals and you bring back a lot of players, I think they have 4 all-state players back, including one of the better sophomores in the state of Michigan. Alma could be a sleeper pick to go a long way, maybe take it a step further than the regional finals. It all depends on matchups and who they might see if they win their district, who they might see in the regional round. But Alma's done a great job of putting themselves on the map here the last couple of years.
That's right. As that is your week number 7 top 15 for Division 3. Honorable mentions for Division 3: Eaton Rapids, Fenville, Wyoming League, Grand Rapids, Catholic Central are your honorable mentions. 9 changes in total. 2 teams coming in: Wyoming Godwin Heights, Imlay City. 2 teams hopping out: Fenville and Wyoming League. So those are the 2 teams in and out. As a reminder, these rankings, along with the rest of the rankings, will be released here tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern. And as I did last week and for the last number of weeks, we will give you the full picture and the scope of all the changes that took place here this past week. That'll be available tomorrow morning on our website at 9 a.m. Yeah, so excited to bring that to you on this Sunday evening. So that is a wrap on Division 3. When we come back here from our next commercial break, we will bring you Division 2 rankings, the top 15 teams from across the state of Michigan, presented by the Michigan High School Soccer Coaches Association. Also want to remind everybody that right now, if you're in the KLAA, that's right, the KLAA, you are on notice, because right now, voting is now open for who has the best fans in the KLAA. And all you have to do, it's really simple, is head over to MichiganSoccerNetwork.com and click on the best fans in the state of Michigan. Click on that link and it'll take you, and you select the team that you're voting for and vote away. Vote as many times as you like, and the winner in the KLA will win a free broadcast here during the 2023-2024 school year, where we will come out and we will cover one of your sports at no charge. We come back here, Division 2, coming up on the Michigan High School Soccer Coaches Association High School Ranking Show. We'll be right back.
Granite City Food and Brewery has 2 Michigan locations in Troy and Northville. Serves made-from-scratch food, brews in-house beer, and even has brunch every Sunday from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. To learn more about their daily specials or to book a private party, visit gcfb.com. Make sure you head over to Granite City in Northville at the corner of 7 Mile and Haggerty, or the Troy location at 16 Mile and I-75.
In life, things aren't scripted.
If you're an athlete, we need people like you and translate those skills to officiating.
You can get a lot out of it. It happens in every town, in every game.
We never have a perfect game, but the rewards always outweigh the negativities.
Welcome back here into the Premier Sports Center studio, Shelby Township, Michigan. Co-ed soccer happening off to our right, and very competitive, as we've seen very expensive camera equipment covering these these co-ed soccer games. So really, really cool. John Turner, Dan Stickrat, you're watching the Michigan High School Soccer Coaches Association ranking show live right now on our Michigan Soccer YouTube channel. We are also live on Instagram. All they can see is our green screen. So, you know, we apologize for not being able to do that too there on Instagram. So, but either way, excited to bring you this show. Hey, we are up to 3,981 subscribers. We are 19 subscribers away from hitting our target. So let's keep pushing to get those 19 subs. Get us over 4,000. Yes, I know I sound like a broken record. I apologize, but we need your support to continue to grow this thing to all the heights possible. Division 2 rankings, the top 15 teams from across the state are going to be on your screen here in just a moment. Before we do that, though, coming up here after this next break, we will announce the winner of the best fans in the OAA. Who was it? Was it Berkeley? Was it Royal Oak? Was it Troy High? Was it Oxford? You will have to find out after our next break.
And I don't even know the answer, so only John knows the answer.
It's true.
And then when we announce the KLA here in another week, only John will know the answer.
Only I will know.
He is the mastermind.
And the mastermind behind all of it. But either way, let's get into Division 2 right now. Division 2 at the bottom of your screen. And we'll start with number 15 newcomer, previously unranked, Fenton High School. 13-4-2. First time they've punched their way into the top 15 this season. Auburn Hills Avondale, 13-4-1, who won twice against Southfield A&T this past week, as well as Pontiac, are only a few, I think 2 wins away from winning a outright OAA blue title. So they still have some work to do, but they are down 4 from 10 to 14. Allendale down 7 from 6 to 13. They're 8-2-5. Holland holding at number 12 at 8-4-5. Zeeland West 12-1-3 is a newcomer this week. They've been in the top 15 here throughout this season. They came back in this week at number 11. Mason 8-1-5. They're up from 11 to number 10. Sturgis 11-0-1. They're holding at number 9. Riverview up 5 from 13 to 8. They're 10-3-2. Walled Lake Western is at 11-1-3. They're up from 8 to number 7. Grand Rapids Christian 9-4-2 is down 2 spots from 4 to number 6. And here are your top 5 for Division 2. Up 2 spots from number 7 to 5, 12-2-2 Fruitport. Up 1 from number 5, number 4, Orchard Lake St. Mary's, 11-2-0. Now, Orchard Lake St. Mary's will be taking on St. John's Jesuit in that Catholic League final here on Wednesday night in the Bishop Championship. That kickoff 7 p.m. here live on the Michigan Soccer Network. Grand Rapids Forest Hill Central, Holland Christian, and Richland Gull Lake all holding at their positions from last week. Grand Rapids Forest Hill Central 12-2-1, Holland Christian 12-1-1, and Richland Gull Lake, your defending Division 2 state champions, are holding number 1 at 13-1-1. Those are your top 15 Division 2 rankings presented by the Michigan High School Soccer Coaches Association. Total changes this week are 10, Dan.
Yeah, and one of the new entries, we'll talk about Fenton. Flint Metro League has several quality teams this year. Linden, Fenton, Goodrich, Ortville, Brandon, Flint, Kersley, Flushing. These teams have all kind of been going back and forth with each other. It's the first time Fenton has broken into the rankings. I believe they're in their 3rd head coach as many seasons. And they were up, I think they finished 2nd to Goodrich last year and graduated quite a few starters. So Fenton's starting to put the pieces together, see if they can escape their district here in a few weeks and make a run. And Zeeland West 12-1-3. This is one of their best teams they've had as of late. I believe they brought back 9 or 10 seniors that either started or came off the bench last year. Very experienced group there. There's always surprises in every 4 divisions, and we'll talk about a couple here. Sturgis, Wall Lake Western, and Fruitport. Sturgis way down by the Indiana border. It's kind of the southwestern tier. of the state, 11-0-1. They're one of the few undefeated teams, all divisions combined. At this stage of the game, they're having a great season. They were like 3rd or 4th in that conference last year. There was 8 schools in that Wolverine conference. Wall Lake Western, I touched on it last year, 11-1-3. This may be their best start they've ever had. They've had some decent teams over the years, but I think this has kind of been a surprise. The Warriors playing some great soccer. They have brought back, again, a lot of players. Came back in uniform this year, so Wall Lake Western, a surprise. And then Fruitport, it's been pretty competitive the last few years, but they haven't had a team like this. Brady Brown's a great center back, also a very good kicker punter on their football team. Jorge Yakos was a freshman last year, still got all league and all district. He's one of the better sophomores in the state. He's scoring in bunches. And Fruitport is off to the races, and they're in a tough conference. The blue division of the Ottawa-Kent Conference has had 4 ranked teams this year, and they're right in the thick of that conference race. So Fruitport making the name of itself, and of course they're going to be in that cluster of some very good districts out there in that Kalamazoo, Holland, Grand Rapids, Muskegon. There's a bunch of clusters, very tough districts on that western tier of the state. Fruitport is going to have to continue to play well to escape out of their district, but we'll know about that in a couple of weeks, but anything is possible.
That's right, anything is possible, including winning the OAA Best Fans contest. We will announce that here on the other side of this break when we come back. But your Division III rankings, top 15 teams. 2 teams coming in, Zeeland West and Fenton. 2 teams popping out, New Boston, Huron, and Linden are the teams that bounced out here. Honorable mention, Ludington, Bay City, John Glenn, Coldwater, and Flint Kearsley are the teams that are honorable mention here this week. We come back, Division I top 15 teams. Who is the OAA Best Fans for this past week? And so much more. You're watching the Michigan High School Soccer Coaches Association High School Ranking Show live on the Michigan Soccer Network. We'll be back after this.
On the carry, number 9.
My dad and my grandfather are officials. I've grown up around officials and seeing how much they enjoy being part of the games. As a student athlete, I've always appreciated the people out there who are willing to give back to the kids. The Legacy program lets me officiate while I'm still in high school, working younger kids' games. Officiating gives me a better understanding of the game. I get to make some pretty good money for a high school kid, and I even get to spend some quality time with my dad. There's help wanted. Just whistle.
Now Worrell has a good cutback from him. He'll fire one, and that's going to go in!
Beat Up Sweet Chili Lime Sauce has 3 perfect ingredients. Sweet, chili, lime. People keep telling us sweet isn't an ingredient. How these wings get sweet then? Introducing new Sweet Chili Lime for a limited time at Buffalo Wild Wings.
Are you looking to grow here in 2023? Let the Michigan Soccer Network help you and your restaurant fill more seats. Help you and your law firm get new clients. Help you and your dental practice find more patients. Find more roofing customers for this upcoming summer. And to help you and your medical practice find new patients. To learn more or get started, visit MichiganSoccerNetwork.com. Welcome back here into our Premier Sports Center studios in Shelby Township, Michigan. John Turner, Dan Stickrat, and we are presenting the top 15 teams from each division across this great state of Michigan. And Division I coming up here in just a moment. Over the break, we did have a comment coming in from Ed Sack. D4 has the most parity on the east side of the state in decades. When the tournament starts, no one will want to play Green Hills.
No, Green Hills wasn't ranked last year and still made a run. You remember, neither was Muskegon Western Michigan Christian, your D4 champ last year. Neither team was ranked going to the tournament, yet they played on the final day of the season. I don't know if that's ever happened before last year.
I'm not the aficionado in the history of high school soccer like Dan is, I just see what's in front of me. But Dan, that's all you, man. So.
Yeah, and I had a conversation 2 weekends ago with Ed Sack. He talked about Division IV is wide open, especially on the eastern tier of the state. So we'll see what happens. I mean, maybe it's that year where there's another huge surprise in the Final Four. Maybe a team that wasn't ranked or no one thought they would get past a tough district. Or maybe it's a state powerhouse program in that top 15.
It very well may be.
Yeah, we'll see.
But drum roll, please, because we are about to announce the top voted team in the OAA for best fans. And that's right, the best fans in the OAA. There were, how many teams are there in the OAA?
21 schools, I think.
21 schools voted. We had over 1,200 total votes here this past week. All of you coming to our website, checking out and voting, and we appreciate that. Without further ado, we are going to announce right now the winner of the best team in the OAA is none other than Troy High. Troy High is the winner here this week. Troy High is going to receive a free broadcast, compliments here of the Michigan Soccer Network and PMG Sports Network. So congratulations to Troy High on your win here in the first edition of the Best of Fans in the state of Michigan. We will be going through each league here. I think Dan said there's over 1 million leagues here in Michigan, so we are going to go through as many as we can with the goal of finding out who the best in the state is. Troy High will have a chance to go head-to-head against other states in a statewide tournament here later this winter. So there you go, Troy High.
The Stampede now, so if you do show up, whether it be a soccer game or a basketball game, I expect the Stampede to come out in full uniform.
I expect
the full house.
All of it, all of the above.
Yes.
So congratulations. It will be announced on social media here a little bit later. I think I have it set up for 8:45, so in about 10 minutes it'll hit the social media world. And so yeah, so it was a close one. But Troy High did come away with the W. So congratulations to Troy High. And but hey, it is Division I time. Everybody's been waiting for the top 15 Division I here, and we're going to bring that to you here right now on the Michigan Soccer Network as we'll make the ticker available as Division I will roll across your screen, and we'll start with number 15, and that is Ann Arbor Huron, 9-4-1, previously ranked number 6, now holding at number 15. East Kentwood, 10-3-1, down 7 from 7 to 14. Edsel Ford, 11-1-4, up 1 from 14 to number 13. Muskegon Reeds Puffer, 13-3-1, they're up 1 from 13 to number 12. Rockford, 9-3-2, they're up 4 from 15 to 11. Clarkston, 9-2-1, they're down 6 from 4 to number 10. Newcomer, since I think the first week of the season, Dan, Troy Athens High School, 9-3-2, previously unranked, have made their way into the top 10 and are now ranked 9. And a lot of that has to do with their win over Clarkston here this past week, a 3-0 victory for them. And let's take a look here at Fraser. Fraser currently number 8. They hold at 8. They're 12-2-1. Ann Arbor Pioneer, they were ranked 5th last week, ranked number 7. This week, they're 10-1-4 on the season. Oxford, 12-3-3. They were number 2 last week, but bounced down 4 spots to number 6 after that loss to De La Salle here this past week, 3-1. And your top 5 for Division I. Forest Hills Northern, 12-1, up 4 from 9 to number 5. Portage Central, 12-1-2, holds at number 4. Traverse City West, 13-1-1, up 9 spots from 12 to number 3. Northville up 1 spot at 13-1-1 from 3 to number 2. And your number 1 for the second consecutive week at 15-0-2. Berkeley High School and the Bears at that number 1 spot for Division I. 12 changes this week, 1 team in, 1 team out. That team was Troy Athens coming in. Saline, 6-1-3, fell out this week in the top 15, Dan.
Yeah, and Saline's with Hudsonville, Rochester Adams, Battle Creek, Lakeview, and New Baltimore, Anchor Bay in that honorable mention category. But you look at this list, John, there's so many teams that are so close to each other in talent. It'll be very interesting to see who actually claims a conference championship, a district championship. We expect a lot of overtime games that come to the district, district tournament and beyond. One little tie, one little loss, and this looks like teams plummet down the rankings. And then they'll have a good win next week, and they'll move right back up in the top 10. So it fluctuates a lot. These teams are all very close. I mean, East Kentwood is a very talented team. I know they lost to Grand Rapids, Forest Hills, Northern 1-0 in a Ottawa-Kent Conference crossover. Forest Hills Northern's from the white, East Kentwood's from the red. And that was a 1-0 game. Both those teams have a lot of talent. Either side can make a long run in D1. Rockford, they graduated a good class. They had their goalie went to an academy. They had a couple injuries early in the season. They're starting to get some players back. They're playing better. They're right back in the thick of things. I think they're second right now in the conference standings behind East Kentwood and the Ottawa-Kent Red. Muskegon Reeth Puffer, this might be the best team they've ever had. 16 returnees. They have a dream team candidate, Liam Smith, 13-3-1. They're from that Green Division Ottawa-Kent Conference, so the Reese Puffer is another team that you have to keep an eye out for. Fraser returned 16 players. They're in first place in that MAC White Division. I think with Romeo and Utica cut right on their heels. Our Pioneers slipped a couple. Still 1 loss. Saline fell out. They only have 1 loss. Huron went down to 15th. They're all in that Southeastern Conference Red Division. Those 3 teams have kind of been going back and forth with each other. So the conference champion there is yet undecided. Oxford had a little blip on their radar. They had some injury issues last week. They played 3 games in 4 days, had a couple starters out, moved some kids around. They did lose the Warren-De LaSalle in a non-conference game, but they came back and they beat, for a couple wins on Wednesday and Thursday. So still a good team. Portage Central, great defensive team. They have, again, single-digit goals this late in the season. They gave up single-digit goals all of last season. Traverse City West is going for their 22nd Big North Conference Championship. And I think the school is 26 years old now. And Traverse City West, they're down the spine. They got 4 or 5 really good players. And the Titans are another team that, if they put it all together, they could make a very deep run. Northville, we talked about that a couple weeks ago. Graduated 17 players, but just in case they had so many quality kids kind of waiting in the wings. Only 3 or 4 kids back that actually started last year, but Nick Settles, one of your best center backs in the state of Michigan, and he's kind of the anchor of that team. And the Mustangs still seeking that first state championship in school history. Same thing as Berkeley. Berkeley has never been past the regional finals, but 15-0-2. I believe they're the only undefeated team left in Division I. And they've got a couple league games left, and they'll be in another very tough district here in just a few weeks.
They have 1 league game left,
This is one
and they are playing this upcoming week. They're playing Rochester. I think it's Rochester Adams who they're playing, and then on Tuesday we're covering Troy Athens as they take on Oxford. Now Oxford wins that game, they win the OAA Red outright. And then if they lose and Berkeley wins, then Berkeley would take over and win the OAA Red, which they have never done before. So a lot of firsts can happen here. I don't think Oxford won an OAA Red.
No,
either,
Oxford just moved up 2-3 years ago. Yeah. The Red, they were when they joined the OAA back in 2010. They were in the Flip Metro League dating back to the 1980s. So they had won some blue and some white division championships, and Oxford's been competitive. They just were really young the last 3 or 4 years, kind of building towards this year and next year. So that I'm not surprised Oxford's ranked. I'm not surprised they're in that title hunt. If they win the OAA Red, I might be a little bit surprised just based on all the preseason hype about Clarkston and the defending state champs Rochester Adams, which fell out a couple weeks ago. Adams has had some injury issues as well, but if they get their players back, and they can get hot and win that very tough district with you guys now in Utica and Romeo in it. The Highlanders can make another deep run. So there's, again, top to bottom, the Division I rankings, and I will mention there's so many good teams. You never know. It's going to boil down to simple 1 or 2 plays in a game will decide the factor of a league championship, district championship, a regional championship. And I can see a number of these teams making a deep run and playing in that final week of the season.
I could as well. Again, total 12 changes this week. I'm mentioning Saline, Hudsonville, Rochester, Adams, BC, Battle Creek, Lakeview, and Anchor Bay. Now, some comments coming in regards to East Kentwood, why they're number 14. With what's going on with the movements that we saw, we just saw, and again, we saw this last year a little bit, a lot that happened kind of early on. It's kind of unusual at this point in the season to see teams moving up 9 spots, for example. Like you saw here with, we saw Traverse City West actually moved up. They moved up 9 spots from 12 to 3. And they're having a fantastic year. They're 13-1-1. So obviously they're having a good year. So and that is a better record than that of East Kentwood. And so when we are asked these questions about why a team is being moved, the only answer I can tell you is that with the information being provided to the chair, in this case Kevin Tuitt, for Division I, along with the results, MPR, and things that are happening here on that side of the state, along with what's happening here throughout the rest of the state, is that they, that's how they figured it out. So I don't have a clear answer for you. I mean, obviously, this past week, if you look at East Kentwood, what happened this week, they did have a loss here to Grand Rapids Forest Hills Northern, who is a ranked team, ranked top 5. They did beat Ada Forest Hills Eastern. That was 8-0. They beat Grand Rapids Catholic Central 7-1. So big wins. That might be the reason as to why they bumped, but either way, I couldn't give you a secured answer or a confident answer as to why they moved from where they moved from down 7 from 7 to 14.
Right. If I'm an opposing coach and it's the state tournament, East Kentwood's one of the teams I would at least want to play.
Yeah.
Brody Kylan took the high school season off last year and played in the academy system. He's back as an attacking midfielder and forward. He is playing lights out. He is, I believe there's a national website that ranked him as the #1 overall junior in the state. All levels of club and high school combined. So Brody Conlin is, I would be surprised if he does not make the dream team. He was first team All-State as a freshman, which in Class A Division I don't think that's happened since the 1980s, having a freshman on first teams. That's extremely rare. Extremely rare in all 4 divisions. You're more likely to see that in girls soccer, but in boys, extremely rare. So, yeah, East Kentwood's a very good team. Tough conference. The Ottawa-Kent Red Conference has 5 or 6 really good teams in that league, and they're one of the conferences that actually has a conference tournament. So they're only playing each other once. I think there's 6 divisions, the OK Conference. I believe all of them have a conference tournament. And they all have 8 schools. Everyone has a soccer program in all 6 of those divisions. And so what they'll do is they'll take their regular season standings of 7 league games, and then how you finish in your 3 league tournament games with the inverse point system, and they'll come up with an overall champion in each of the 6 divisions of the OK Conference. So East Kentwood's a very good team. Rockford's in there, Grand Haven, Caledonia. Hudsonville has been honorable mention a few weeks this season. They brought a lot of players back. It's a tough conference.
To talk, someone also asked about Romeo, and Romeo came up last week as well. A couple things. One is based on everything we've heard about Romeo and everything. Obviously, what it's going to come down to, I think the league will come down to their last game against Fraser here on October 9th, and that game's at Fraser. So. Again, I think there's a lot to be said about why teams aren't being ranked, and I think it starts with the team. I think it starts with whether or not the coach wants to be ranked, whether they're having those conversations, and coaches may be having those conversations. We've said before, and time again, they're electing to say, hey, we don't want to be ranked. And I'm assuming the Coaches Association sometimes might say, okay, that's fine. And other times it might be not too bad, you can be ranked. So I think in that scenario, it might be a toss-up.
Yeah, and with a case like Romeo's become a lot more competitive, even in the last 5 years. The girls' team the last decade's been very good. Romeo hasn't won a district since 1987. That was most of you weren't even born then, but they pulled a couple of monument upsets to win a district. But that's 36 years ago. They were honorable mention, I think, in the preseason, the first week or two of the regular season. It faded out, but Fraser, Romeo, and Utica are all good teams.
Yeah.
And Romeo and Utica are with you guys now. Rochester Adams. Rochester High is young, but playing a lot better. It's a tough district. Only one team is going to win that district, and you have defending state champs in there, and it's never easy. That's one of those districts where you might think there's a favorite, but there's 4 or 5 schools could actually win 3 games and win that district championship.
Well, and this is where I say this, and I mean it with the utmost respect to all teams, is that I think a lot of this, as we get to the business end of these rankings and this season, you're seeing what I would imagine is a presumption of success for these teams, right? So, we talk about it. We saw it last year in that district, in those districts. The last year I think it was Eisenhower. No, Adams hosted the districts last year. This year, I believe it's Eisenhower hosting it again, or Eisenhower's hosting it over at Swinehart, I believe, or somewhere in that Utica district. I don't think it's the Rochester schools hosting it, but that who comes out of that will be taking on the winner of that Berkeley, Troy Athens, Troy High, Seaholm, Groves district, right? And based on what we're seeing now, the favorite in that, I would say, to teams be favored be a Troy Athens and a Berkeley, who would be favored in that district to win a final. Just based on what we know right now. They're obviously top ranked. That's what would happen. And then who would be the top ranked team, the likely winner of that Eisenhower Rochester? Well, from everything we've heard about Eisenhower, even though they're not ranked, it would be presumed that Eisenhower and Romeo could be the ones coming out of that. You also have Rochester Adams. So there's 3 teams in there that could. Also, there's Utica. So there's 4 teams that could come out of there and win a final. And then they'd have to take on the winner of that Berkeley, Troy, Athens, district. And last year we saw that in Rochester Adams taking on Troy High. That was the state final last year. Like, if you were to say the state final, like, that was a state final caliber game.
The atmosphere was incredible. The crowd size was great.
So when you think about that, whoever wins that game, that regional semifinal game between those 2 districts, and I'm assuming that's the same setup as it was last year, it will probably be the odds-on favorite to go all the way to a state final, right? Because you see who's coming out of, and again, that's just an assumption based on what we saw last year. You've got Fraser and Anchor Bay, who both own their separate districts, and they would meet up again potentially in a regional semifinal, just like last year. Last year, Anchor Bay came in with that win, but hey, Fraser could. Again, if you have my predictions right now, I say Eisenhower wins that district. I say that Berkeley, Troy Athens, and I'm a Troy Athens grad, so when I say I think Berkeley's going to win that district, I think Berkeley's going to win that district. So I see Berkeley, Eisenhower in a regional semifinal. I see Anchor Bay versus Fraser in that regional semifinal.
That happens.
I see Fraser winning that game this year over Anchor Bay, and I see Berkeley beating Fraser in a regional final, going to a state semifinal. That's how I predict. I could totally be wrong, and I'm okay with that. If Athens were to win as a former grad, I'm ecstatic. But that's if you were asking my predictions, that's what I would say. And it's purely speculation, because
and that's Division I. But the top 15 Division I, there's a lot of schools that have never won a state championship on that list. Berkeley has not.
Nope.
Northville has won a couple on the girls' side and finished up the runner-up, a year and a half ago. They never won. Portage Central's won some on the girls' side. I do not believe they've ever won one in boys soccer. Forest Hill Northern did win one in D2 just about 5 years ago. Oxford's never won. Ann Arbor Pioneer, they've had some great teams. They went 1-3 in Mr. Soccer back in the late 90s, and I don't think they actually won a state championship. Fraser got to the semifinals in 2014. They had never won. Clarkston's never won. Rockford, Muskegon, Reese Buffer, Dearborn, Edsel Ford, Ann Arbor, Huron. None of these teams have ever won a state championship. So we could have based on this list, we could have a first-time state champion in Division I, Or we could have a program that's been there before. Traverse City West has been, 4 or 5 finals in D1. They won back in, was it 2007 with Casey Townsend, an All-American. East Kent ones won 5 in about 18-year period. They've been one of the best programs collectively in the last 2 decades in D1. But it'd be interesting. There's going to be so many close games in a Division I tournament. It's going to be.
So if we talk about Division I right now, and this is good. So in that region, in that District 15, hosted by Rochester Adams, so it's Adams hosting again this year. Utica Eisenhower has a first-round bye. Stony Creek and Rochester will play each other in the district opener. Romeo will play Utica, so that's going to be a really good game between Romeo and Utica. They would play the winner of Rochester Adams would play the winner of that game. Eisenhower would play the winner of the Rochester Stony Creek game. So again, Eisenhower has a first-round bye. So does Rochester Adams in that district. So Eisenhower, I think, wins that game against Adams, but I could be wrong. Eisenhower, then they would play the winner of that Berkeley district in regionals. So we would see the exact same type of matchup as we did last year. And then New Baltimore Anchor Bay has a first-round bye. Macomb, Dakota will be taking on Utica Ford. Port Huron Northern versus Clinton Township Chippewa. And then Harrison Township L'Anse Creuse versus Macomb L'Anse Creuse. And then Anchor Bay will play the winner of that Utica Ford matchup. Utica Ford, obviously, we've seen them. They're a pretty good team, right? We've seen them this season. And that Fraser, they have a first-round bye. Sterling Heights Stevenson versus Warren Mott. So they have I would say they have an easier road to getting to a district final. Fraser does. St. Clair Shores Lakeview would take on Roseville. Sterling Heights would play Warren Cuzno. So I mean,
yeah, likely you would see St. Clair Shores, Lakeview, and Fraser in the district final for the second year in a row.
Yeah.
Lakeview had like 16 or 17-2 last year, and they're off to a very good start this year. The only knock with Lakeview is their overall strength of schedule has not been worthy of a top 15 ranking, but still a quality program. Has been playing very well the last few years, and this could be one of Fraser's best teams. They've never won a state championship, never been in the finals. I remember back in 1989, they lost to Troy Athens in the regional final. They had a very good roster back then. And 10 years ago, they lost to Rochester Adams out at Lake Orion. Like 3,000 fans showed up for that state semifinal game. It was a great atmosphere of it. It's one of those programs where they've had a good group come through last year and this year. It's all kind of been pointing towards that. And the Ramblers are another team that, could make a run. But again, they have not had success, I believe, against New Baltimore Anchor Bay in recent years. Anchor Bay was your state runner-up 2 years ago. They graduated 16 players from that team. Last year, they still won the MAC Red on the final day of the MAC Red season, won a district, and got to the regional finals. In fact, they were up 2-1 on Adams early in the second half before Rochester Adams came back and won that game 3-2. So Anchor Bay has been consistently good for the last decade.
And again, we talk about this, and the reality is that the winner of that region that's going to be taking place at Troy High School, that Eisenhower, that Anchor Bay, Fraser, Berkeley, that whole district will go into that region over at Troy High. And then the winner of that region would then go on into the state semifinals and would take on the winner of that downriver Dearborn area. So that the Ann Arbor Huron, Ann Arbor Pioneer, Saline, the Northville, right? Well, actually, Northville, I think, would actually would end up being on the other side. Would they be on the other side of the bracket or no? Because I think Northville is further west. So
yeah,
I think it's anything down.
But Northville's like with Brighton. Brighton hasn't been ranked this year, but I'll tell you what. Brighton's got another very good lineup. They brought back 7 or 8 starters. They got an MLS Next kid that came back who's got Horizon League and MAC offers. Brighton has not been ranked, but that's a team that I think should be in that ranking. They're having a great season, and I wouldn't want to play Brighton. When you have all that collection of talent, especially experienced talent, Brighton's another team that could make a run. Now, that's always a tough district. Those 2 districts in that area, with Northville, Novice has some great teams over the years. Brighton, Livonia Stevenson, Livonia Churchill's playing a lot better than they have. They're young, but Churchill has made a surge a little bit. It's just a tough pocket where winning league and districts in that area is a lot like up here in the OAA, where it's hard to win championships. There's just too many good teams close in proximity that, there's a lot of ties and 1-goal differences between these schools where it's hard to predict who's going to win that district. I mean, Dearborn Edsel Ford won a district last year, but Woodhaven and Monroe are in that district, and those two teams are playing decent soccer right now. Monroe has one of the better players in the state. He's a college prospect. And Woodhaven, you look back 10, 20 years, Woodhaven's won a lot of districts out of that group. And so I don't know if Edsel Ford or those schools can get past the regional semifinals, but based on upsets, you never know when that one huge upset in the tournament's going to happen. A lot of the years it's in that first round, but since they moved that to the seeding process, the top 2 seeds, you're starting to see more upsets happen later in later rounds of the tournament except for the first couple nights.
Well, something that we're going to announce here shortly is coming up here in about a week. We will be doing a high school playoff preview. We will look at each district here throughout the state for all 4 divisions. We'll also look at the regionals, and we will talk about this exact thing. We will give you our predictions, who we think is going to win the whole thing. Dan and I will actually have a nice little competition here of who we think will go all the way in each division. We will post that. We will follow that. And have some fun. We'll also put it out there to you as well, who you think is going to win the whole darn thing. And let's have some fun with this, right? Because what more would you want than not to have some fun when talking about the high school playoffs here, as we're about to go into them here in just under 10 days. So let's talk about that district seeding horrible system. Well, I mean, hey, something that we should definitely talk about. I mean, the MIHSSCA, they for the longest time, if you don't know this, David, and David just put this out there, and I remember because I used to do it. I would go on a Wednesday or a Tuesday into the host school, and we would go into that room, and it was a 5-minute meeting. We would take our names, we would write them on a piece of paper, our school name, they'd put them into a hat, and they would shake it up. The first thing they put out, that's the home team. The next one, boom, that's the away team. And they would do that for the entire district. It was if you think this is worse, that was worse. And there was no way to see who was going to, and I don't know if that's how every district did it, Dan, but that's how they did it at our district, and it was terrible. So you could have the best record and whatever, and it was number 1 versus number 2. There was no system at all that did that. And the problem with districts specifically is the MIHSSCA, because of the geographical areas, has tried everything they can to keep teams as close as possible during the districts. That is the reason why we have what we have. It is nothing else. It has to do with anything else. It's not like, well, we're going to move Athens over here. No, it's, well, Athens is closer to Sterling Heights, so it makes sense. Because there was a number of years there where Troy High and Athens were not in the same district, right, and they went off to the Uticas, and Troy High would go off and they'd be in this, that Bloomfield Hills because they were closer to Bloomfield. It's not the perfect thing. MPR would definitely solve that, right? If you took the best MPRs in your district and you just went from top to bottom, all right, and just, hey, number 1 MPR on the left side, number 2 MPR on the right side, and then do that all the way through, that would be great. Maybe, because in the OAA, in the red, there is, I mean, who are you playing that's easy? Who are you playing that's soft? I mean,
there isn't a bad team. I mean, Seaholm, I think, is in last place right now, but they won a district in the league OA White last year. Seaholm still has 3 or 4 really good players. Rochester's really young, but they've tied Royal Oak and Berkeley. They only lost to Rochester Adams and Athens by a goal. I mean, and those are teams that they may not win a district or make a deep run, but they could wreck someone's season because they have just enough talent.
Oh, yeah.
Just enough young talent to knock someone off in that first night of the districts.
Well, I mean, nothing. And Todd, I'll say this. This system is way more fair than the system that I used to be a part of. So while you're saying that the story is a great story, it doesn't make it any of this the right way. This is far better than what it used to be. And what I'm saying is that Berkeley, while Berkeley, and I know this is directly in regards to the seeding for Berkeley. Berkeley, is the #1 MPR in their district, but they got screwed with a first-round bye. They obviously, right, but the best team should have a first-round bye. That didn't happen, and now they have a harder path. They have to play Royal Oak in game 1, right? And that doesn't seem right. And I completely agree with you in regards to that. But this is the MHSA we're talking about, and the MHSA does not make changes. I mean, they make changes once every 40 years.
I mean, they finally got the seeding involved with soccer, boys and girls soccer, baseball, softball, volleyball. They've been introducing that in the last few years into those sports because it was hard. You can go back 20, 30 years ago, if not longer, and you saw the same problem in various sports. Like soccer, you would have 5 ranked teams in an 8 school district. You would have 1 versus 3 and 4 versus 8 in the first night of the tournament.
No.
I remember the days back in the 80s and 90s when there was a lot of public schools in Detroit, Flint, and Saginaw, and there was no seating for boys basketball. You think about all those powerhouse teams. Now, a lot of those schools have consolidated or closed down over the years, but there used to be basketball meccas in Detroit, Flint, and Saginaw, and it was the same concept as soccer where it was so difficult to not only win a district, but get past the pre-district game based on the old system of drawing names out of a hat. At least now they sort of break it up, but there's still some power districts where you look at every team saying, every team here is at least decent, if not good. And there's a couple districts in each division where it's a little bit thinner from top to bottom.
Being that it's not, while I 100% agree with you, nothing about it is fair. Nothing about it is right. But I can't, again, I mean, this has been the #1 conversation. If you polled every high school coach in Michigan, I think they would all give you the same response, which is the system stinks. So on some level, I mean, some coaches might love it because they don't have the same kind of parity that they have here, maybe in the South, Southeast Michigan. But the reality is that it could be better. I actually don't think every team should make it. I come from the belief that, you take almost like football, right? You just the best teams only play. You have 64 teams or however many teams play. Then they play their tournament. I come from that school of thought. I think it makes it more competitive. I think it's a better system to do it that way. And then when it comes to the whole seeding of everything, it makes it much easier because you're dealing with 60 teams versus the quote unquote however many teams you might get. So
football is the only sport where you have to essentially qualify for the postseason. Everything else, everyone's in there.
No, I know, but I think of soccer though. I feel like soccer, there's so many teams.
Boys lacrosse became an MHSSCA sport in the early 2000s. So that sport does a much better job of breaking up the powerhouse schools and then, I believe, seeding an entire region. I wish they would do that in boys and girls soccer, just like I wish they'd do that in volleyball and baseball and softball and down the line. Could that happen? Eventually, yeah, as we migrate. But at least they've got something in place that breaks it up a little bit. There's still an imbalance in terms of strength of districts where you might have one district and you look at the 8 schools and you could say there's 6 or 7 schools can win this district. The next district's over, they have 8 schools, but there's only 1 or 2 teams that can win the district because there's 3 or 4 schools in there that are well under 500 that just don't have enough experience and club players to win a district championship in soccer. But yeah, I think everyone should enter. I know you and I, John, we disagree on that.
Well, it's not one of those things where I'm so firm on it. I just say that I think the ultimate thing that would solve, I think, a lot of this would, if it comes down to distance being traveled, then I think that if you only allow the top teams to play, then maybe that might be the answer. I don't know, but hey, the reality is that it's a large ask. It's an ask that when you talk with the state, they aren't looking to make any changes anytime soon. This was a long time coming to have the MPR as part of this process. It's for the most part, it's been I think it's been okay. I think the reality is that especially here in Metro Detroit, where there are some teams that when you start getting to some like the Oak Parks and the Southfield A&Ts and the Ferndales and all these, it's not Ferndale, but like the teams that maybe don't always have enough players to play. They only play the league games. They don't play anything non-league. It's a crapshoot every year whether they're going to make it in or not. And that's what happened here with the Berkeley district specifically. A team came in, I think it was either Oak Park or Southfield came in, and they changed the whole complexity of the whole district. But yeah, but a lot of comments coming in. Fraser adding a loss when they play Romeo, so the little trash talk going on in the comments section. Appreciate that. 40 more years, maybe, according to John, for that to happen. Good discussion. Maybe someone will listen. Hey, I mean, we think that everything should change when it comes to soccer here in Michigan, and not just that. There's so many things that could make the game better here at the high school level in Michigan. But at the end of the day, when you talk with the state of Michigan, it's all about it's an extension of the classroom for them. Hey, there's a competition that they get to play in, and I think that's the biggest deal. But hey, if you want change to happen, it comes with getting a lot of people to do something and stand up and say something, right? So maybe it comes down to a poll. Maybe it comes down to the voice of all the schools to say, hey, this is what we want. But I bet you if you were to ask athletic directors who think differently than that of coaches, they would probably tell you that they're okay with the way things are. And that, to be fair, that's probably a lot of it, because they don't necessarily want to see things change. They're okay with it the way that it is. But I could be wrong. It's just when I talk with these athletic directors, I can tell you that those are some of the things that they say. So, but hey, I mean, that is hey, we a little longer here again tonight, Dan. I mean, we're dragging these things on and having more thorough conversations.
And we're getting a lot of engagement from people around the state.
We are
giving their 2 cents worth. That's always good. Keep those comments coming.
Yep.
Keep the emails and text messages coming. Reach out to your district chair. Feel free to chat with us. I'm an open book. I love to chat. Not just soccer, I just love to chat high school sports and sports in general. Feel free to drop me a line or an email, and like we talked about in the pregame before we actually started the ranking show, that we're a network on the move as well. We're starting to grow, things are starting to happen, and I'd like to hear some input. Maybe some suggestions of things that we could look into doing here in the next year or two.
Yeah, a lot of exclusive content coming your way. When I say exclusive, it means you gotta pay to be a member. $3.99. We are moving all of our games that have been broadcast, all of our production, everything that's done prior to 2023 is being migrated over to on demand and a paid spot. So if you want to get access to that, and with download options and discounts and things like that with exclusive content, you can become a member as part of one of our 3 different membership options: $3.99. I think it's $7.99 and then $29.99. So, but for as low as $4 a month, you can have access to all of our on-demand content and exclusive shows that we'll be providing as part of this network. When I say exclusive, things like what we're doing right now, this after show, so to speak, we would actually make this only available to our members here going into next year, as well as anything before our shows that we do as well. Our goal is to grow, continue to provide spectacular content as we keep being told that we are doing. As Ed Sachs says, the lines of districts are always interesting. Schools willing to host to help drive the geographical lines. NPR only works when teams play more games. 8 games by October 1st is just not enough. I actually didn't get to play 10 games in order to even be able to play in districts. So, but either way, we're excited to have you stopping by. This was week 7, the high school ranking show presented by the Michigan High School Soccer Coaches Association. The rankings are live right now on our website at themichigansoccernetwork.com. Also on all social media. Congratulations to Troy High. You are the winner of the OAA first ever Best Fans in the state of Michigan. There it is. Once again, congratulations to you and your team. Want to remind everybody coming up here on Tuesday, that's right, Tuesday, the 2023 MSN Top 50 High School Players around the state, 45 field players, and 5 goalkeepers. And then, of course, what else do we have? It's KLA time. You're on the clock. Vote now at MichiganSoccerNetwork.com. Vote, 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 and vote some more, as you will have a chance to win your team, your school, a free broadcast here provided by PMG Sports Network or the Michigan Soccer Network. So yeah, and thank you, Todd Spurl, for becoming a member. We appreciate that. As I had a little scratch in my eye, I apologize. But that'll be a wrap here from our Premier Sports Center studios here. The first day of October, week 7 is in the books. Tuesday night, we got a great game coming your way. Tuesday night, Troy Athens, number 9 Troy Athens, is taking on number 6 Oxford in an OAA Red matchup. That matchup will determine who wins the Red this year. Will Troy Athens be spoilers, or will Oxford go in, take care of business, and win the OAA Red for the first time in school history? We'll find out on Tuesday night at 7 p.m. On Wednesday, Gold Star FC Detroit will have that game kick off 1 p.m. Eastern on FIFA Plus. And then at 5 o'clock and 7 o'clock, the CHSL Catholic League Finals, the Cardinal Championship between Bishop Foley and Grosse Pointe Woods University of Liggett. That game kicks off at 5 p.m. Eastern. And then at 7 p.m., we had the Bishop Championship as Orchard Lake St. Mary's making their first ever trip to the Catholic League Finals, taking on St. John Jesuit, who in their first year in the Catholic League made their way to a final. And we're off Thursday and Friday after those 4 games in 2 days. And then on Saturday doubleheader, we'll be out at Gold Star at Romeo here in Washington Township as they take on, I don't know who they take on, to be fair. I have to look at the schedule. They play a game at 2:30 on Saturday. And then I am doing a remote game here in Chicago on Saturday night on the Michigan Soccer Network. And so we'll have that to you as well. So as it looks as though all the Berkeley Bears fans are rooting for Troy Athens to win that game on Tuesday, and rightfully so. And but Berkeley still has to take care of business by beating Rochester Adams in that same game on Tuesday night. So we might even have a camera there just so we can bring in some feeds on Tuesday night to be a part of that process. But that will do it. Dan, man, thank you very much, as always.
Good show as always. A little long. We started a pregame at 7:30. It's now 9:15.
So we apologize for that.
But nothing better to talk about than to talk about
high school soccer. That's right, high school soccer. It's coming to a close. But we couldn't be more excited. We'll have more information about our playoff drawings and our playoff show here coming up here later this week. And want to say thank you to all of our production and all of our staff here at MSN. And we wish you all a great rest of your Sunday. And as I always say here on the network, we'll see you next time for more soccer.